this is really what it's all about to me. All of this work, 10, 11 years, fucking working free full time to do this shit and just get nothing but crap from guys like Tom. The Satoshi client is going to fail. It was, to me, and it was a predictable outcome of the design, right? And I didn't want to see Bitcoin fail, and I didn't really care about the Satoshi client, but nobody really wanted to hear it. And over time, so there was all this big blockchain wars. I don't get involved in that stuff. It's not my interest. I'm interested in making sure that something survives that does what I'm in Bitcoin to do, which is to give permissionless money to people who need it. I don't care about speculation. I don't care about neat features. So I focus on the node. I don't get involved in fork wars or block size debates, altcoin debates. I don't care. I don't mind altcoins, but I only work on Bitcoin, which means anything that conforms to the principles that are laid out in the white paper and in the code, right? The principles. So what are those? What are we trying to preserve here? Well, the innovation of Bitcoin is that there is no central authority telling you what's valid, right? You do it yourself. And if the software fails the way I'm describing, the solution to that becomes a central authority. And the current, so Bitcoin, we call Bitcoin Core now, has continuously been moving in that direction for predictable reasons, right? The fact that it's gotten so slow has driven huge amounts of development in that direction, right? So for example, just stuff we've talked about, assume valid, right? What is that? What's the purpose of assume valid? Well, it ships with this at a high point by default. You fire it up, you run the thing, it syncs up, you think you're good, but you didn't validate. Right? You didn't validate. Okay, who validated for you? The guys who put that checkpoint, not a checkpoint, but put what we call a milestone in the software. Okay, so nobody's validating anymore. I mean, some people might do it, but people aren't doing it. So,
well, in some circumstances, it could be okay, right? If the checkpoint is like 2015, 2012, right? Yeah. But should it be, let's say, January of this year? That might be a little bit. It
doesn't matter what it is. If you didn't validate it yourself,
yesterday.
You didn't validate.
I understand. Right? But I think that the snapshots do make sense to a certain point for fast sync, as long as you are also as running a node, and we don't have enough node runners, right? I think that it actually lowers the threshold and obstacles for more people to run their own node.
So this is the... They don't ever validate. This is my point. It doesn't... It's not like, you go back far enough and now it's okay. If you didn't validate the entire chain from block 1, you didn't validate, right? Anything could be inserted in there for you, right? You're trusting somebody else who validated or didn't to tell you what's the trustable point that you can validate from, which is kind of pointless if you're just trusting that point. So that level of trust has become normalized through things like assume valid. Now, I'm not saying it can't be legitimate. We have that same feature, which we call a milestone. The way we use it is we say, if you've spent the time to validate before, which doesn't, in our implementation, doesn't take that long, right? Take 4 hours, whatever. You validate, and then you write down that hash of that block that you validated to. Maybe drop it down 1,000 or so if you're worried about reorgs. But you get to that point, you don't ever need to do it again. It's perfectly secure for you to say, drop that into your config file and do it that way every time. Now it takes 37 minutes. Great, that's legitimate. But if you've never done that, you've never validated, and you're not running a node. You're just running some software that somebody gave you, right? Now, of course, there's also
That's why I brought up the Ethereum analogy, because that's what's happening effectively with MetaMask and a lot of other...
It's happening in Ripple, it's happening in Ethereum, It's happening everywhere. So there's all these attempts to get to big blocks basically by not validating. And this is the point I'm raising is this is happening in BTC as well. right? It's happening kind of through this back door of assume this, assume that, right? And we've got assume valid, we've got assume UTXO, we've got UTREXO creeping its way in the door. Of course, we've had SPV for a very long time, and other approaches which are continue to be batted around, which basically are ways to not validate. Why? Because validation is slow. That's the only reason. If validation was fast, none of this stuff would exist. It would not even exist.